Hello, whisperers. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy tonight's tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. It helps more than you know. Now, dim the lights, and let's begin tonight's story. We were supposed to be spectators. Air Force readiness drill, middle of the day, standing on the edge of the flight line with our rifles slung and our helmets off. The C-17 in front of us looked like it had been parked there for years, heat shimmer making the tail look like it was bending. Ground crew moved like they had all the time in the world, wands waving lazy arcs, loaders creeping toward the ramp. The only sound was the wind against the buildings and the occasional whine of a cart engine. Then the PA tone hit, sharp, high, and wrong. Medical group, internal incident, shelter personnel, security forces respond. Nobody moved at first. Then a pair of medics bolted from the far side of the tarmac, pushing a stretcher so hard the wheels squealed. The patient was tied down at the wrists and ankles, face wrapped in gauze, chewing through it like a dog trying to get off a leash. I looked at my team. Mount up. We moved without discussion. Helmet straps under chins, rifles slung forward, boots hitting the pavement with purpose. Driver had the Humvee running before my door closed. Comms was already keying the PRC 152, trying to cut through a mess of overlapping voices. It sounded like panic. We swung around the back of the clinic. Blood smeared along the wall just above the grass line, not like a spray, like someone had dragged themselves and left a trail. Side entrance, I said. Breacher came forward with the hinge charge. Metal door, old hinges, easy work. I gave the nod, and the charge popped with a deep thump. The slab sagged on its frame like it had lost the will to stand. We flowed in. The hallway was bleach, copper, and something sweet. Fluorescents flickered like they were trying to keep a secret. Blood pooled in front of a crash cart on its side. Two legs stuck out from under it, twitching. A third set of legs straddled the cart, bent and pale, moving in jerks. Gunner sent two controlled bursts into the torso. Nothing. He stitched upward and took the head apart. It slumped, and the twitching stopped. We kept moving. A nurse slid across the tile on her knees, hands up, hair stuck to her face with blood. She didn't even look at us, just scrambled away from the exam room door behind her. Breacher stepped in, shoved something back into the wall, and wrote it down with a boot in the chest. I dropped to a knee, put the muzzle under its jaw, and tapped the trigger. Skull popped like a melon under a hammer. 3 survivors in triage, 2 with obvious bites. Doc zip-tied their wrists and shoved them into a storage room without asking permission. The third, a young dentist still in his coat, kept mumbling, "I can help," until I told him he'd help by keeping his mouth shut. The ambulance bay was next. We heard the tapping before we saw it, fast, uneven. The overhead door was down, but shadows pooled under it. Shoes pressed against the rubber lip, and between them, faces low to the ground. "Barricade," I said. We shoved overturned gurneys into a waist-high fence. I pulled a flash from my vest, rolled it under the door, waited for the pop, then signaled driver. The door rattled up 3 feet. They came in low. Hands flat like spiders, teeth already snapping. Shotgun roared, controlled bursts stitched across eyes and jaws. One grabbed my sling and tried to pull itself up my chest. I kicked hard, felt teeth catch on boot leather. Breacher pumped the shotgun again, splattering the wall. Driver dropped the door before they could push all the way through, crushing a hand that kept twitching until the bones cracked. We dragged the unbitten out the side door. Security forces met us halfway to Gate 1. Their Humvee rolled up with K-rails strapped to the back and eyes wide. The NCO in the turret had an empty pinel where the gun should have been. We mounted our M2 on their truck without a word, bolted it down, fed the links. They tossed us tourniquets and a box of 5.56 in return. Gate 1 was holding, but barely. K-rails in place, fence bowing like it wanted to snap. The press of bodies on the other side made the wire sing. SF kids were firing short pops through the mesh, trying not to hit each other in the chaos. I took the grips of the M2 and gave them a real answer. Short bursts, walking heads off in a clean line. The pile at the fence grew until the wire sagged under the weight. Then I dropped the line low, cutting knees, turning the pile into a wall they'd have to climb over. We were still feeding links when the control tower lights went dark. The radio hissed, then, there in the stairs, third landing. Static swallowed the rest. I looked at the tower. Doc, you hold here with SF. Breacher, gunner, driver, you're with me. The wind shifted, bringing a wave of sweet rot. Somewhere on base, a siren died mid-howl. We stacked on the tower door. Breacher set a small strip charge, whispered, "Light and tight." I nodded. The door blew inward, catching on something soft. We pushed it open. Heat and the smell of burned hair poured out. Something on fire tumbled down the stairs toward us, limbs flailing, still trying to stand even as the skin peeled away. We stepped over it and started climbing into the dark. The stairwell was a vertical coffin. Concrete steps spiraled up tight, with just enough room for two boots side by side. Light came in thin from narrow windows, the rest flickering from emergency bulbs. The burning one we stepped over kept trying to crawl until Breacher drove a boot down on its neck and left it twitching. The sound from above wasn't footsteps. It was a scraping rush, like someone pushing a full garbage bag down each step, over and over. "Up slow," I said. Gunner took point, M27 tucked tight. Breacher behind with the shotgun, then me, driver holding rear. Every landing, we cleared the corners, rifles snapping to shadow. On the third landing, we found the first Air Force body, half in uniform, half in pieces. The jaw was gone. Ribs were spread open like fingers. The smell was thick enough to taste. Movement above. 3 of them came down the steps on all fours, hands and feet slapping concrete, mouths open like broken hinges. Gunner stitched the first one from the throat up. Breacher took the next with a slug that made it fold backward over the railing. The third leapt the last 5 steps. Driver shoved it into the wall, and I drove my bayonet under the chin until it stopped. We reached the top floor. The door to the cab was cracked open. Someone inside was breathing hard, trying to keep quiet. I pushed it open slow. One controller sat under a desk, headset still on, pistol in hand. His forearms were chewed, but he wasn't turned yet. Runway lights, still on. he said, voice shaking. Radio works. Just don't let them have the field. Copy, I said. Gunner took the scope position, scanning the base. It was worse from up here. Clusters moving between hangars, vehicles burning along the perimeter road, the housing area dotted with movement like bugs under a porch light. Fuel farm, Gunner said, pointing. A dark tide was heading straight for it. We didn't have time to babysit the tower. Breacher locked the stairwell door behind us, wedged it with a steel bar, and we moved. The base fire department met us halfway to the fuel farm. 2 ARFF trucks, crews pale but standing. I waved them into a wedge formation, hoses ready. We laid out the plan quick. Foam sweep to slow them, then I'd light a trench with thermite to create a burn line. When the horde hit the foam, they slipped and crawled over each other in a mess of limbs. Breacher dropped the thermite in a maintenance ditch. Jet fuel ignited in a low whoomph, then roared into a sheet of fire. The heat slapped us in the chest. Burning shapes stumbled through and collapsed, still clawing at the ground until their hands turned black. We used the chaos to cross the infield and drag 2 grounded pilots from under a wing. They were frozen stiff until I shoved them toward the trucks. Next stop was munition storage. If the horde got in there, the whole base would go up. SF wanted it secured. We denied it instead. Breacher wired charges to collapse the access road, then tossed a thermite grenade onto a pallet of practice bombs. The road caved in with a thunderclap, cutting the approach to nothing but a smoking drop. That's when comms called. Family housing was overrun. Survivors were trapped. We hit the motor pool, found a school bus with keys in the ignition, and started loading whoever could run. Dependents, a base chaplain, 3 maintainers, still in coveralls. The drive back toward the evac zone was a gauntlet, zombies pouring from carports, clawing at the bus. One man was pulled halfway through a broken window, screaming until Gunner ripped him free and cut down the attackers in a burst. Halfway there, we swapped the M2 for an MK-19 from a disabled Humvee. 40mm grenades thumped, airbursts tearing clusters apart in sprays of meat and fabric. By the time we crested the hill, overlooking the baseball field evac zone, it was already packed, fence lines buckling under the press. Our bird was 6 minutes out. We had 4. The evac zone looked like a bad dream. Survivors were packed shoulder to shoulder behind a chain-link fence, clutching bags, kids, and each other. The fence bowed under the weight of bodies, some alive, some not. From the far side of the baseball diamond, more poured out of the bleachers, spilling onto the infield like a wave breaking wrong. I checked my watch. 6 minutes until the Pave Hawk hit the LZ. That was being generous. We didn't have 6 minutes. Form the V, I said. We swung the Humvees nose to nose at a 45, making a funnel with the fence line as the third wall. MK-19 in one truck, M240 on the other, rifles filling the gaps. Breacher dropped a claymore just inside the foul line and angled the kill zone to keep fragments off the survivors. On my mark, I said. The first group broke from the bleachers, 10, maybe 12, moving fast. The MK-19 thumped twice. Airbursts turned the lead runners into chunks that staggered the rest. The M240 opened up, stitching waist high to cut them in half. The survivors screamed, but they stayed behind the fence. That was all I needed. From the left, a cluster tried to push past the dugout. Breacher hit the clacker. The claymore went off with a flat crack, spraying BBs and teeth into the chain link. The ones still moving got double-tapped by driver. 2 minutes in, the bodies piled high enough to make a ramp. They started climbing. "Short bursts," I yelled. "Keep your barrels cool." I tossed an M18 smoke into the left side crowd. White cloud bloomed, giving us a blind to reposition. Gunner shifted the MK-19's angle and started dropping grenades just behind the fence line, the blasts knocking climbers backward into the mass. The smell was unbearable: burned meat, gasoline, and the sharp bite of thermite residue still clinging to my vest from the fuel farm. My teeth felt coated. The bird came in low from the east, rotor wash throwing smoke and ash sideways. Crew chief in the door was waving us to move survivors now. We broke the fence with bolt cutters and pushed people toward the chopper. Doc was a wall, checking mouths, necks, sleeves. No biters on board. If someone hesitated, he shoved them forward. If someone hit a bite, they didn't make it to the bird. The first lift was barely clear when the bleachers collapsed under the press. The sound was like a building breathing its last. A fresh surge poured through the gap. "Funnel right," I yelled. We pivoted the Humvees, MK-19 hammering into the front ranks while the M240 swept low to cut legs. I ran to the far side, lobbed a frag into the biggest knot, and turned back in time to see Breacher yank a survivor off the hood before they could get pulled over the top. 5 minutes later, the bird came back for its second run. By now, the infield was a carpet of bodies, some still crawling, others twitching in place. We kept them off the fence long enough to load the last civilians. Then the crew chief gave me the wave. We weren't flying out. Not enough space. So we drove. The convoy rolled out with the MK-19 still working. We smashed a service gate with the lead Humvee, red smoke pouring behind us to mask the retreat. The bus engine howled, but it kept up. We hit the narrow bridge over the drainage canal. On the other side, Breacher pulled the clacker from his vest and thumbed it. The bridge blew in on itself, dumping the first dozen pursuers into black water. The rest piled up behind, wailing and thrashing. We didn't speak until we reached the outer training range, the sound of the base fading behind us. The sun was just breaking the horizon, painting the sky a color I couldn't name. I counted my squad, all there, breathing, no bites. We'd been guests when this started. By the time we left, the Air Force Base was nothing but a burning shadow behind us. And we were the last ones anyone would be calling for help.